Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so happy you're here. My name is Hannah and on this channel I post a lot of content related to anti-MLM. So as always, I link a playlist at the beginning of my videos, sharing with you my big anti-MLM playlist if this is a topic you're really into. I've been told that playlist is very bingeable. It has every video on the topic in there. But if, for example, you are really into these horror story videos specifically, there's also a smaller playlist broken down by type of video. You can find those on my channel page if you're looking for just the horror stories playlist. And with that being said, as I'm sure you've gathered, we have another horror stories video today. These are the personal experiences that people have had with the industry of multi-level marketing. They write out their story, they email it to me, I save it in a folder, and then I pick out a few when I'm filming these videos. I'm always on the hunt for great stories, so if you have your own, don't hesitate to send it my way. The instructions for where to send that are in the description box below. And before we read these stories, I want to give a huge thank you to Babbel for sponsoring today's video. Babbel is one of the top language learning apps in the world. Its intuitive lessons help you learn a new language through real-life conversations. At this point, we are well into the new year, and learning a new language is a great goal to have for 2023. Whether you're looking to learn a few basic phrases to help you communicate on your upcoming trip abroad, or maybe you're wanting to refine your overall language skills, Babbel is a great tool to help you achieve those goals. I really appreciate the fact that the lessons on Babbel are designed by real language teachers, and that they focus on real-world conversations with actual practical applications regarding travel, business, relationships, and more. I also love that the lessons are self-paced and it's not a huge time commitment. Whether you have 10 minutes a day or you have an hour a day, you can really easily work Babbel into your routine and make daily progress towards learning that new language, which feels really rewarding. I use Babbel to learn Spanish. I started taking Spanish back in college, and now I use Babbel on my phone to keep those skills fresh because learning a new language is very much one of those use it or lose it kind of skills. So I love that Babbel allows me to make language learning a part of my everyday life. But Spanish is only one of the 13 languages that Babbel offers. You can use it to learn German, French, Portuguese, or Russian, just to name a few. Babbel is scientifically proven to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. And if you'd like to give it a try, you can click the link in the description box or scan the QR code on the screen here. This is going to get you 60% off your Babbel subscription. Thanks again, Babbel, for your continued support of the channel. Now let's read some horror stories. This story says, "Hello there, Hannah. Please keep my story anonymous. Thanks." This is the story about how essential oils didn't save my life or protect me from illness. They made me sicker to the point where I was hospitalized. I'm now a writer, so I'm breaking this down the best I know how. The prologue. Let me set the scene. It's 2013 and I've just moved into my first exceedingly crappy apartment with my best friend / roommate, who we will call Tara. She was working at a health food store in our small town and I was attending junior college. A few months passed with no incident, all was well in school and work. Then I noticed my throat started feeling super tight and swollen. I had been eating healthy thanks to Tara's employee discount, and I was taking vitamins and probiotics too, thanks to the guidance of Lydia, not her real name, who was Tara's work supervisor, who was always sending home samples of vitamins and whatnot. I couldn't figure out what could be making me feel so sick. I was trying to hold out going to the doctor because I didn't want to cost my parents any money. I was covered by their insurance at the time. The rising action. After seeing a steady decline in my health, Tara started to get desperate. I did too. She came home from work one day with a bottle of Young Living Thieves oil and told me that Lydia had said this would be so helpful for my throat. She said it would cure me and kill anything negative. What? Growing in me. Tara told me I was supposed to drink it 3 times daily and gargle with it. I started ingesting this oil multiple times daily and began gargling with it as I was told. Rule number 1 about Essential Oil Illness Avoidance Club: we don't drink oils. But of course, I had no idea that ingesting oils could be so dangerous, and a kind older woman who seemed to know her stuff had given this medicine to Tara for me. She'd never given us anything bad before. I trusted her. The climax. We had a family trip coming up that I could not miss. The plan was to drive from Arkansas to Dallas, leave our vehicle at the airport, and then fly from Dallas to Seattle and on to Juneau, Alaska, where my extended family lives to this day. This was a common Alaska Airlines route for us to take. We'd done it 4 times in the years since we'd moved from Alaska to Arkansas. I kept taking the oil up until the day we started driving. I wasn't getting better, I was getting worse. My throat was now totally raw. My parents saw that I was struggling and took me to an urgent care. I don't recall now if we were in Dallas or on our way there when we stopped at the care center. Everything about that time frame is now sort of blurred. I was diagnosed with strep throat, given an antibiotic antibiotic and sent on my way. After I took the antibiotic, I noticed some rashes spreading on my face and hands. I figured they must just be my body reacting to the antibiotic's power. Turns out that I was right, but not in the way that I thought. I am a veteran traveler and I have never vomited on a plane until we took off from the Dallas airport. I vomited multiple times during the flight. When we got off the plane at the Seattle airport, I was checked out by paramedics who cleared me to go to my next flight, but advised my parents that I needed care the moment I got to Alaska. Our next flight was to Juneau, and despite the okay to travel that the paramedics gave me, I was wheeled to my gate on a gurney. It was a dramatic way to traverse the airport, and my parents were horrified and promised I would get medical care ASAP. On the flight from Seattle to Juneau, I lost my ability to talk. I could feel the sides of my throat starting to press against one another. At least that's how bad the pressure felt. When we made it to Juneau, I was rushed to the hospital from the airport. As I fought for breath on the ride from the airport to the hospital, I remember thinking, if I die, at least I die here, looking out at the insanely gorgeous Alaskan sky punctured by soaring mountains. I couldn't swallow anymore, and I had a cup filled with my spit. A kind nurse asked me, "Can I take your ice?" And my mom had to explain that it wasn't an ice cup. The nurse was kind and brought me another cup. Disgusting, I know, but it shows how scary of a spot I was in. At the hospital, it was found that I was having an allergic reaction to the antibiotic, and I was also diagnosed with strep and mono. All that time, I had been struggling with this and taking oil as medicine because I was afraid of going to the doctor and costing my parents money, which ironically ended up in me costing them a lot more money. When I finally went to the urgent care in Dallas or wherever that had been, they had only figured out half of the problem. Of course, they couldn't know that I would be allergic to the antibiotic. I received steroids, antibiotics, anti-inflammatory medication, and medication for my allergic reaction, and was hooked up to an IV to try and get rehydrated. It was a truly horrific experience. The falling action. Needless to say, I spent that vacation sleeping, taking medicine, and recovering instead of seeing my family. I couldn't ride a mountain bike with my cousins or go out and hike alongside my father and uncle. I slept. For 7 days, almost without ceasing, I slept. I have never so much as looked at thieves' oil again, and promise I never will. Moral of the story, don't take essential oils in place of actual medicine. Essential oils are not medicine and should not be treated as such. They are oils that make a room smell different. That's it. Don't take the advice of non-medicinal staff when it comes to medication. Also, please know that essential oils will not cure you. Don't wait to get healthcare if you need it. Well, that's my horror story. All my well wishes to you and the cats and baby girl too. A hearty hello to other channel viewers out there, sending you all a lot of good vibes. Happy and thankful to be here and to be helping educate folks on the dangers of essential oil consumption. Your story is a fantastic example of the dangers of essential oil consumption. 2 things I'm taking away. Number 1, obviously, don't ingest essential oils. And I'm wondering why this Young Living rep thought that that was a sound piece of advice to give you, to gargle and ingest essential oil when you had a sore throat. Ugh, it just sounds horrific. Like, that's not the kind of thing you would want to be putting on that very soft, sensitive tissue back there. Some hot lemon water, some tea maybe, but oils, essential oils right out of the bottle. Like, it just sounds so painful. You can see what happens when you put essential oils that are undiluted onto your skin, onto the outermost layer of your body, and that can cause rashes and burns and reactions. Putting that onto an already sensitive and aggravated sore throat sounds like torture. But more importantly, the second big moral of your story is obviously that essential oils are not a replacement for healthcare. Strep throat is an infection, a very common one that can be very easily treated with antibiotics. In the end, you were diagnosed with strep and mono, and I'm not a healthcare professional. I don't know if one of these things can kind of develop into the other or make the other worse or whatever. But what you're describing is it went from a sore throat and then it got worse and worse and worse and worse, and it just kept building until eventually it feels like you can't breathe and your throat is closing on you. And it just makes you wonder if at the very first sign of a sore throat, if you did go to the doctor, if you did get a diagnosis and you got on a round of antibiotics, would it have escalated to this point? Who knows? What I do know is that essential oils are not a proper or proven course of treatment for these things. So by using oils in place of actual medical treatment, you are therefore just delaying the medical treatment and you're waiting for it to get worse and worse until you have no choice to be rushed to to the hospital and given all these treatments simultaneously to combat all of these things that have developed. We can't say that ingesting oils caused you to get strep or caused you to get mono, but we can say that it did exactly nothing in treating those issues, and it only delayed proper treatment, and in the end, it made for a really miserable experience for you. Essential oils are not medicine, and Young Living Huns are not doctors, and I'm sorry that she sold you on this idea that taking thieves oil was going to cure your throat condition. This one says, "Hey Hannah, I hope you, AJ, baby girl, and the cats are doing amazing. I've been watching your MLM videos for almost a year already, and I've actually chatted with you a couple of times on Instagram, and for everyone out there, I can say you've always been just as sweet and nice on chat as you are in your videos. Thank you." I must admit, I am actually the worst at Instagram DMs, but when I do have time, I really do enjoy chatting with people on there, so that's awesome. My story is a long one, and I've been thinking about how I can summarize it as much as I can for months now. I've written this email in my head during long showers more than once. Just as a disclaimer, and also something to keep in mind, I'm from Colombia, which means English is not my first language, so I apologize for any mistakes. And also that the MLMs and the experiences I've had with them are kind of different from the ones most people in countries like the US may have. But the experience I'll share today actually didn't happen in my country. It happened in Germany back in 2014 when I went there for 6 months as an exchange student. During this time, I stayed with a host family that was chosen for me by my exchange agency. I was really excited to meet them since they were actually an immigrant family from Turkey, so not only did they know and understand the struggles of being a foreigner in another country, they were also from a very different culture than mine, starting with the fact that I'm Catholic and they're Muslim, and I've always loved to know more about other cultures. Just FYI, I will be changing the names of everyone in this story since you could actually look them up online, and I want to respect their privacy. The family consisted of S, the mom in the family, and her husband E, and 4 of their 5 children who were still living with them. 2 of them were married already, but they were living with their spouses at my host family's house while they finished building their own houses. So as you can tell, there was a lot of people living under one roof. S and E were the ones who originally immigrated from Turkey, but all of their children were born in Germany, which in this case meant that the children had a lot of influence from the German culture. S, however, was still very proud of her culture and her religion. She wore her hijab with pride as well as more modest clothing, and she was very happy with her life as a wife and mother. She never regretted not finishing high school, she got married at 15, or not going to university. She was also relieved by the fact that no one expected her to bring an income to the household, since that was her husband's job as the man of the house. These were all things that she constantly told me, so as a non-Muslim, I apologize if I get anything wrong. I'm sorry if the context part of this story is a bit too long, but I think it's important to have in mind in order to understand the whole picture later on. Even though S didn't have a proper job, she actually did earn her own money, which from what I understood was for her to spend however she wanted and was not expected to add to the household income. She sold a lot of different stuff through catalogs, and she sold them mostly to other women from our neighborhood, which was predominantly Turkish. I now know that these were actually MLM catalogs, but in her case, she did focus on selling the products and not on recruiting. This is interesting because it's the same thing that happens in my own country. MLMs like Avon, Mary Kay, Tupperware, etc. are very common, but I think most people don't even know they're MLMs because the reps only focus on selling. Whenever you go to get your nails done or to the hair salon, you will always find these catalogs, and most people have a trusted rep that they buy from. These reps don't even know their upline or that they even have one, and whatever they make is literally just a bit of extra money on top of having another job. That was the case with S. Ladies would come to our house or give her a call to place their orders, and that was it. From what I remember, she must have been selling stuff from at least 3 or 4 MLMs at the same time. So that was the S I knew for the first month of my exchange. A very devoted wife and a mom who sold makeup and house products to make a few bucks and buy herself some nice handmade clothes. What you're explaining here about the culture of MLM companies in other countries other than the United States is actually something that's commonly reported to me, so I apologize if I'm making an overgeneralization here, but a trend that I'm noticing is that people who have stories from other countries tend to say something similar to this, like the focus really isn't on recruiting, most people have a Mary Kay lady in their life, people treat this as like a side hobby or a supplemental stream of income, but they're not relying upon it as their full-time job. And that's a huge contrast between what we see in the United States especially. I feel like the narrative and what I see most commonly are people trying to make this their full-time job, and there's this whole added element of hustle culture and being a boss babe or being your own boss and creating generational wealth and making something of yourself and being an entrepreneur, and those are all kind of the undertones that are really played into with MLMs. I don't know if the whole idea of the American dream maybe has something to do with it. This idea that success is within your control, and with enough hard work, you can make something of yourself and you can create your own wealth. And while the argument can be made that the American dream is somewhat of a fallacy, it is this idea that a lot of people cling to. And perhaps maybe people who believe in the idea of the American dream are also the same kinds of people that tend to get involved with MLMs, the same people who believe that everyone is on a level playing field and has the same opportunity for success, and that your success is up to you and your hard work. I think there's a lot of parallels between the narratives of MLMs and the narratives of the American dream that maybe we don't see as often in other countries. And again, I don't mean to make any overgeneralizations, but I'm just noticing this trend of people who send me stories from other countries, that it seems like there's more of an emphasis on selling a product for a little commission, for a little extra fun money on the side, whereas it feels like in the United States the narrative is much more being an entrepreneur, making something of yourself, climbing in the ranks and being a business owner and having all this wealth and success. And it's interesting to kind of note that contrast. But everything changed one day when I came home from school. S was sitting in the living room with her laptop and had the biggest smile I had ever seen. I always spent time with her after school, and I loved talking to her and learning more about her life, her culture, even her cooking, because she often invited me to cook the most delicious meals with her. But this day she was different. I asked why she was looking so happy, and she told me, "Mary, I just signed up with the most amazing company and I'm going to be rich." Wait, what? I was of course very confused, but also intrigued, so I sat down and listened as she explained to me what it was all about. And with every word she said, I was closer and closer to my final conclusion. Holy F, she's signing up for one of those pyramid schemes. All right, here you go, making a liar out of me. I had that whole tangent about how the culture of MLMs is different in other countries than it is in the US, but here's an example of how she's come across this one particular MLM opportunity where she's almost catching that vision of what this could be and how much money she really could make off of this. I didn't know as much about MLMs back then as I know now. All I knew about them was the fact that my uncle lost a lot of money with Amway a few years prior, and he was so ashamed by it that no one in the family talked about it anymore out of respect for him. Of course, I wasn't going to tell her my opinion on MLMs. She had already paid for her starter pack. She was extremely excited, and it was also not my place to give unsolicited advice about money or finances. After that conversation, the following days were filled with her talking about the products she was going to receive, the fact that they were miraculous, and more importantly, that she was going to be rich. Finally, the day came. A huge box of products from this MLM arrived. I've purposely left out the name of it, again, to protect S and her privacy. S was so incredibly excited, and she gathered the whole family after dinner so we would all be present for the unboxing and haul. The very next day, she hosted her first party and opportunity meeting. I was present for that first one since she needed some help setting up the projector and also with her PowerPoint presentation. And that's when I understood why this MLM was different from all the other ones she was a part of in the past. This was a new MLM in Germany, and her, as well as the first people she enrolled, were going to be in the very top of the pyramid. It was the perfect time to join, and this MLM was already very successful in other countries, so why would it be different here? Around 20 people attended this party, and I would say at least 15 of them joined as reps. She started having parties at least 2 to 3 times a week, and every time at least 90% of the people would either join or buy a bunch of stuff. Very quickly, this new MLM started to become S's whole life. She would only talk about the products, the business, the new people she had enrolled, etc. And the claims about the products would get crazier and crazier. One of the products was a toothpaste that she claimed was the best remedy for acne. She actually made me use it once, and I got a horrible rash just 2 days before my birthday. Another one of the products was a magic instant coffee that, according to her, was helping someone who had their leg amputated grow it back. Yes, a coffee that grows amputated limbs back. Okay. What? This is a new one for me. I should make a list. I need to start making a master list somewhere of all of the insane MLM claims because they're almost unbelievable. Just when you think you've heard it all, and no product claim could possibly be crazier than this one, another one comes in and tops it. Our afternoon conversation conversations became less and less frequent and eventually completely stopped. Sometimes I wouldn't see her for days and then found out that she was at home the whole time, but she stayed in her bedroom talking and chatting to people about the business. She stopped cooking and cleaning the house, so everything was very messy and everyone just ordered takeout every day. She also stopped taking showers or getting dressed unless it was for a party or a business event, and sadly there would be days where even if she was around and free to hang out, I wouldn't want to be with her because I knew she would only talk about her MLM, and also because she smelled. Yes, not taking a shower for days during the summer and using magic toothpaste as deodorant wasn't helping her much. As crazy as it sounds, this is not the first time I've heard of using an MLM toothpaste as deodorant. This came up in a Zoom call that I covered from Young Living, where they were claiming that you can take the thieves' toothpaste and use it as deodorant. I'm not implying that S was in Young Living or that's the company she got involved with in your story, but this would be one of those more outrageous product claims, and it's crazy to see it popping up more than once. Why do we need to be smearing toothpaste in our armpits when there is such thing as deodorant? MLM reps claiming that one of their products can do something completely unrelated to that product will never make sense to me. I don't get it. She stopped attending family meetings because she was always busy with something business related, and the once sweet, caring mother became a smelling, unavailable, and always tired woman who only cared about her MLM. She was a completely different person at the end of my exchange than she was at the beginning, and it was very sad to see how much her family missed her, but I didn't know what to say to bring her back. I stayed in touch with them after I came home once my exchange was over, and I always paid close attention to her social media to see how her and her business were doing. And that's how 1 year after she joined, she finally made the post I knew she was dreaming of from the beginning, that she had officially made over 100,000 euros from her business and was the most successful rep for this MLM in Germany. She made it. She was rich, but at what cost? While she bragged about her success, on that same day, her son announced the birth of his first child. He uploaded pictures of the whole family in the hospital after the birth, but one person was missing. S. A couple of months later, one of her daughters announced her engagement. Beautiful photos of the engagement party were posted, but S wasn't in any of them. She was, however, tagged in multiple pictures and videos from her MLM, her downline. She constantly uploaded pictures in events where she was now a speaker, but she wasn't there for any of her family's celebrations and accomplishments. Fast forward to the present, all of her children are now married and have children of their own. I stopped following her because it honestly broke my heart to see what she had become. I never saw her in any pictures with her family and even started to believe that she had divorced her husband or something. That was until recently when he actually uploaded a picture with her to Instagram, and the caption said something along the lines of, "I'm glad to have you back." And all of the comments were from her children and other family members congratulating her for being back. Most of them were in Turkish, so I had to translate them, but that was the common theme on most from what I got. That's when I searched her on Facebook and saw that she had deleted everything related to the MLM. So a happy ending, I guess? Of course, I'm happy to see that she's apparently back to being the amazing woman she was when I first met her, the person her family missed so much. But I can't help to feel horrible about the fact that she missed so many incredibly important milestones and accomplishments all because of an MLM. And this case is different to others because I can't say, and it was all for nothing, because she actually did get what most people don't. She was rich. She was at the top of the pyramid, but at what cost? Anyway, thank you for reading my incredibly long story, and thank you for doing the amazing work of sharing and educating about MLMs and how horrible they can be, even when you do get to the top. I hope you have an amazing day, a wonderful rest of your pregnancy, and please give lots of kisses to Zeke and Cooper from me. Un abrazo desde Colombia, a hug from Colombia. Thank you. I think you summed this up perfectly. I really don't have that much to add. This story does show us that most people don't make good money in an MLM, but sometimes they do. Occasionally they do, especially when you get in early. If it's brand new to your country, no one knows about it yet, you recruit a ton of people, you make it to the top of the pyramid yourself, but as you said a couple of times, at what cost? What did you have to sacrifice in order to have that position and to make that money? Was it worth it to miss these really big milestone moments with your family? Was it worth it to isolate yourself? Was it worth it to spend so much time and energy on the MLM? And it's telling that when she decides to leave the MLM, that now her family is expressing publicly on social media like, "We're so happy to have you back." Clearly clearly being a part of that business opportunity changed her as a person, and she wasn't interacting with her family in the same ways, and it seems like she had to sacrifice a lot in order to make however much money she made. I'm a firm believer that money can't buy happiness, and who cares if you have a ton of money if you had to sacrifice things like your personal relationships and your sense of fulfillment along the way. I'm also a firm believer that this is kind of a realization that people in MLMs have to come to eventually. The way I see it is that there's two paths you can go down in an MLM. Either you join, you spend way more of your own money than you ever make back, you realize it's a scam and it's a waste of your time and you have to get out because you have no choice, you're bleeding money. Or there's this other path where you do make some money. Maybe you make some really good money, but there does come a point where you have this realization that, oh, this is not sustainable. I can't make a career out of this. This was nice while it lasted, but I've run myself into the ground. I've burned myself out. I've sacrificed tons of really important things in my life for this MLM, and now it's time to leave. And at that point, maybe people leave the industry for good, but also sometimes they just hop to a different MLM because it's new, it's exciting, it's fresh, and they go down the whole path all over again. But the point being that MLMs are not sustainable, and I'm happy to hear that she did get out of her MLM, and hopefully she's able to return to that kind of life she had beforehand where she seemed a lot more happy and fulfilled. A great story. Thank you for sending it in. This story says, "Hi Hannah, I just found your channel today and I want to tell you the story about how a Kirby salesman and his upline basically held me hostage in my own home while I was recovering from being rear-ended. It's okay to use my name. I don't know the guy personally and I doubt he remembers me at this point. This happened a few years ago when we still lived in a different state on a cul-de-sac. I was home alone on some pretty strong pain meds because I had been in a car accident the day before and it had caused a pre-existing back problem to be unmanageable for a bit. Someone knocked on the door while I was eating my lunch and I answered thinking that it was our neighborhood mail carrier with a package. Nope, it was a random skinny guy in a button-down shirt and dress pants lugging this black case and offering to vacuum one room. I asked if I had to pay and he says no. He vacuums the office, which was just next to the front door, and then goes looking for our master bedroom. I start following him as quickly as I can manage while reminding him that he said one room and I'm not comfortable with him going into the master bedroom, but he insists on showing the capability of the amazing vacuum he has with him today. He proceeded to let himself into our bedroom, unmake our bed, and start vacuuming the mattress. Absolutely not. That feels like a complete invasion of privacy. A random person coming into your home, finding your master bedroom, taking the sheets off of your bed to start vacuuming it. Completely inappropriate. Don't be like this guy. I finally get him back downstairs and I think he's gonna leave when he starts asking me about purchasing the damn Kirby. No, I have to talk about that with my husband first, I say, hoping that the mention of my partner will send him out the door. He's not deterred. Even worse, he calls in his manager. It's at this point that I finally notice the unmarked white van parked in front of my neighbor's house, out of which his manager, upline, but everyone here knows that, is getting out of. My meds are wearing off. It's been about an hour since I started eating my lunch and never finished, and now I'm trapped in my own home with two strange men. I text my partner and beg for him to come home or to call or something. Thankfully, he's just down the road, so he drives home and comes in. Apparently, my getting him to come home means that they need another Kirby guy, so another guy gets out of the van and comes into our house to try and convince us to buy a $3,000 vacuum. The final guy was the absolute worst, a real piece of work. Every one of them was pushy, but he was outright aggressive and even tried to use our child against us. He saw a picture of him on the wall and asked if we would want him crawling on, quote, unsanitary floors. My partner, cool as a goddamn cucumber, immediately said, if it means you're leaving, I guess I do. They finally piled back into their van and left, off to see if they could ambush someone else at home. Plot twist, they left a piece of their vacuum behind. I immediately chucked it into the recycling. Thank you for all you're doing, and I hope you have a happy holiday season. What is with the dang Kirby guys? They are so pushy. I have heard too many of these stories at this point, so here's my official recommendation. If a Kirby guy comes to your door asking to vacuum one of your rooms for free, just say no, okay? Sure, it sounds harmless at first. Come on in, vacuum this room right here by the front door. It'll take him 10 minutes. How bad could this be? Apparently pretty bad, because so many people have stories just like this one of these Kirby guys taking advantage of the fact that you have now welcomed them into your home. So my advice, get rid of them at the door. Shut the door. Be rude about it. I don't care. Close the door on their face. Because once they cross that threshold and they're in your house, they can walk freely wherever they want, clearly. They can go upstairs, they can find your bedroom, they can vacuum your mattress for you, they can bring in even more people sitting in a van across the street. And it can feel like a true ambush at that point, I'm sure. You, being home alone, just trying to recover from a car accident, now have 3 Kirby guys in your house, far overstaying their welcome and being rude and aggressive and trying to push you to buy a $3,000 vacuum. That seems to be the way that it always goes with these stories. If you're giving pushback to that first guy, they just bring in another guy, 2 against 1. Your husband comes home, it's 2 on 2. Okay, bring in a third guy, 2 on 3. It almost feels like an intimidation tactic, and the fact that they've got you cornered and uncomfortable in your own home. And that catches people off guard and makes them very uncomfortable to the point that maybe they would just buy the vacuum to get these people out of their house. It's never just as simple as getting one room vacuumed for free. It always seems to escalate into something far more invasive. So, Hannah Alonso's official recommendation: if a Kirby guy comes to your door, shut the door. And I stand behind that wholeheartedly. I don't care if it's rude. These people are invasive and pushy and rude, and you will get yourself into an uncomfortable situation if you give them permission to enter your house. Thank goodness you didn't buy the vacuum. Good for you for throwing away that part they left behind. And thank you for sending in this story so we can give this PSA: don't let Kirby reps into your house. This story says, "Hi Hannah, first off, love the channel. Thank you for putting all your hard work into sharing these stories. It has been almost therapeutic for me. You will see why in my story below. This story deals with my mother and how she managed to alienate everyone close to her and deplete all of our generational wealth through years of multiple multi-level marketing schemes. To give some context, my grandparents were able to create an impressive amount of wealth through hard work and grit. By the 1990s, their wealth sat somewhere in the lower end of 7 figures. My mother took nursing in college on a complete whim, which led to a career full of high pay and even higher dissatisfaction with her work. Rather than make a career change and work towards better job satisfaction, or focus her source of happiness through developing meaningful relationships with family and friends, my mom turned to get-rich-quick schemes to base her self-worth in. This all coalesced into the biggest MLM victimization I have ever seen in my life. My earliest childhood memories include Amway products. My mother spent very little time with me, instead wanting to try and peddle these overpriced and underperforming products to anyone who would be kind enough to listen. When Amway failed, she turned to Melaleuca, and so on and so forth. It became a blur of nonsense brands after a while. My mother would buy heavily into an MLM, try it for a year or two, fail, and then repeat the process again with a new company. My mother pushed all her friends away after a while. This is because they would grow tired of her pressuring them into buying products and selling them. She never really put any actual effort into their friendships. My mother also never really had time for me and my siblings. She was so hyper-focused on her business opportunities that she would constantly be on the phone attempting to sell these products instead of spending time with her kids. She irreparably damaged her relationship with my siblings and me. After my brothers and I moved out, my mother went completely broke and sold her house to move in with my grandmother. She still continues to pursue MLMs. My mother is now single, jobless, has no money left, and is estranged from her children. It's all because of these MLM companies. I can't even have a phone call with my mother without these products being mentioned to me, and it makes me sick. She even paid to get a book published about multi-level marketing that she has made no money on. There was even a point where she tried to start her own MLM. It's not uncommon to see that people who decide to found MLM companies also have a long past with other companies. It's not always the case, but it makes a lot of sense that the people who start MLMs are those who have tried and failed at several other MLMs. They know how the business opportunity works. They know how that compensation plan is designed to function. And therefore they know that the people who begin the MLMs, therefore putting themselves at the top of everything, are the ones who are going to make the most money from it. So kind of fascinating, but not surprising that she seems to have a long history with MLMs, and at one point she even considered starting her own. I don't think she ever made any financial strides from any MLM. It's been nothing but losses. It's baffling that she keeps going back to them. When my grandmother passes away, I have a strong feeling that she will use the inheritance to perpetuate her obsession with MLM pursuits. I am very scared to see where it goes. I've accepted that my relationship with my mother will always be estranged and that she will steal away my entire inheritance in these scams. It took a long time and a lot of hard work for me to get here mentally. I'm still upset that I will likely need to figure out some way to house her after she inevitably goes broke again and no longer has the safety net of my grandmother. My heart really goes out to anyone else who has experienced this with a family member. I genuinely believe these companies are cults, and losing my mother to them has been a lifelong challenge. Therapy has been a godsend to me. I recommend it to anyone who has gone through a similar experience. Unfortunately, I haven't figured out how to save my mother from this. If you have any advice, I would really appreciate it. And then here at the bottom, you include a list of MLMs your mother has been involved with: Amway, Melaleuca, Mary Kay, Nu Skin, Jeunesse, ACN, Mona V, ASEA, I've never heard of that one before, and Swiss Bionic Solutions, plus many more I can't recall anymore. Gosh, I can see how this is a tough situation for you to be in. No child deserves to feel like their parents are intentionally choosing other things over them or prioritizing other things over them, especially when you consider that what she's choosing to prioritize are money-making schemes that, from the way you're putting it, she hasn't even seen any payoff from yet. It's difficult for me to wrap my brain around how people could prioritize these kinds of things over their kids or over their friends or their family or other more important, valuable things in their life. But I guess that does speak to the fact that there are influences or mind control tactics that are being employed in these companies that make it so sometimes people don't think rationally about it. It doesn't make logical, rational sense that a person could be, as you phrased it, single, jobless, have no money left, and be estranged from their children, and still believe that their decision to be in an MLM is worth it. That all of those sacrifices are somehow justified because being in an MLM is better. It just doesn't make sense to me. But knowing what we know about the different mind control tactics that are employed in people in this industry, we can have some compassion for the fact that she's being manipulated and she is being brainwashed. And a lot of the same strategies that are used to keep people in cults are the same strategies used to keep people in MLMs. And that's where I'm kind of struggling, where you're asking for advice at the end of your email because I don't know what to say. When people get to a point of being so deeply brainwashed by the promises of their MLM companies, it feels like it's nearly impossible to get through to them, and any attempt that you make to get through to them is going to be threatening, and it's only going to drive that wedge between the two of you further. So I don't know, it's hard. You can't make people do things that they don't want to do, and you can't make people see things that they're not ready to see. I'm kind of at a loss on what advice to give because I'm of the belief that you generally can't force people to wake up. And if you try to force them to wake up, it's only going to make the situation worse. But how about this? I'm going to direct you to the comments. Does anybody have any suggestions on a gentler way that we can kind of nudge our loved ones towards the realization that being in an MLM is not what's best for them and that we still care about them in a way that's not going to come across as threatening or judgmental or otherwise make the situation worse? Because this is something I struggle with. I don't know what the best course of action is. But if anybody has some good suggestions, I would love if you could leave them below. This story says, "Hi Hannah, if you end up reading this for a video, please keep me anonymous. I've been watching your videos for a little over 6 months and find your horror story videos especially fascinating. I never thought I had an MLM horror story, but a conversation with my mother recently turned that thought around. In my 3rd grade year, I got a teacher who was very loved by other students who had been in her class, and I was very excited. Unfortunately, I did not have a good year with her, in part due to being picked on, but also in part because she was a very distant teacher. The teacher, let's call her Mrs. O, had a baby a couple months before school started at the very end of the previous school year. I remember even little 8-year-old me had thought that she was kind of distant while teaching and would sit at her desk on her phone a lot of the time during class. I had assumed this was because of her recent baby though. Probably a month into the school year, we got a student teacher in my class who the parents were told would, quote, just observe the class and help some students with their work. This student teacher ended up teaching the entire class for the majority of the year, which she did not get paid for. Mrs. O, after we got this student teacher, would spend even more of her time in the classroom sitting at her desk on her phone. My class also had a Facebook page, and me, being a nosy little child, would always take my mom's phone and look at it. I remember while looking at it seeing a lot of mentions of Mrs. O hosting parties that the children's parents could attend at Mrs. O's house. When our student teacher left in April and Mrs. O had to start teaching by herself again, she became slightly more involved in the class, but she would still spend the majority of her time sitting on her phone in class. After that year, Mrs. O no longer was a teacher at my elementary school, but I had assumed she just moved to a different school. Turns out, no. My mother informed me that Mrs. O had been caught and reported for posting Mary Kay pitches in school Facebook groups while she was supposed to be teaching. Enough parents had taken an issue with this that she was fired from her teaching position at the school, and I don't think ever went back to teaching after that. I felt bad for her because I assumed she got into this MLM after she had her child, and I'm sure it was marketed to her as something she could do as a side hustle, but it ended up taking over her life. Thank you for reading this. If you do, I really appreciate all the work you do to spread the word about the toxicity and predatory nature of MLMs. Yikes, not good. And I'm surprised to hear that there was like a school Facebook page or a class Facebook page that she was openly posting Mary Kay pitches on during school hours. It's not like you can't see exactly when those posts were made. If I was a parent and I happened to be looking at Facebook during the day when my child is supposed to be in class being taught by this person, and I'm seeing that their teacher is making posts unrelated to school things during school hours, that would make me really angry. However, I do feel the need to point this out because I was a student teacher at one point. I did go through this process, and I just want to make it clear that student teaching is a phased process. So they'll start out in your classroom just observing, and over time, as the weeks go on, they're supposed to take on more and more responsibilities until eventually they are the teacher. I want to say that phase for me was like 6 to 8 weeks, so like almost 2 months. The responsibility of leading the classroom and teaching every day's lessons does fall on you as the student teacher. And yes, it is unpaid, but it's a very important part of the whole process to become licensed. I just felt the need to make that clear that Mrs. O likely didn't just give all the responsibilities to the student teacher because she was so involved with her MLM on the side. That is just the natural progression. That's the way things go in student teaching. The student teacher gradually takes over the class. However, it is still not appropriate for her to be over here in the corner at her desk, completely disengaged from what's going on. It's her responsibility as the mentor teacher to be observing, to be helping, to be instructing the student teacher on ways that they can become a better teacher. It's not supposed to be a vacation for them where they just get to hang out at their desk and be on their phone all the time, not paying attention at all. I was so fortunate. I lucked out. I had the best mentor teacher. I learned so much from her. She was very hands-on, very involved. Even though I was teaching the whole day, she very rarely was ever at her desk. She was always walking the classroom. She was always giving me tips and tricks and pointers and helping me where I needed it, being really hands-on with the students. Like, that's how it should go, you know? So it's very inappropriate that this teacher chose to use that time as a little vacation to work on her Mary Kay business on the side. And the fact that she's leaving this digital trail of what she's doing all day on these Facebook groups where all the parents can clearly see what she's up to. Like, I am not surprised to hear that that resulted in complaints from the parents and therefore disciplinary action from administration. Very, very sad to see, especially because it seems like students really loved her in previous years and you didn't get to have that experience when she was your teacher. And as you briefly mentioned, it makes you wonder if she was maybe targeted for an MLM. Lots of teachers are. Teachers are not paid very well, so I'm sure this was pitched to her as a way to make some extra income. Additionally, being a teacher and a parent at the same time has got to be one of the most emotionally exhausting things to go through. Because think about it, your job is to be with kids all day long, and then you go home and you're with your kids all night long, and then you go to school and you're with kids all day long. My mom was a teacher, and I distinctly remember her telling me once that it was really hard when me and my brother were young because she would go to school and all day kids would be like, Miss Alonso, Miss Alonso, Miss Alonso. And then she would come home and it would be mom, mom, mom. And just kids need you all the time, 24/7. So knowing that, it's also not uncommon for teachers to take a couple years off when they have really young kids of their own. And having a way to make some money from home is very appealing to teachers with young kids. And I think all these factors really play into making teachers more vulnerable to falling for MLM schemes, because a lot of those promises that MLM companies make are very appealing to teachers. And with that, that's all the stories I have for you for this MLM Horror Stories video. As always, if you have your own story, you know what to do. Check out the description box. You can find my email there. Go ahead and send your story my way. I would love to have it. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you in my next one real soon.